The forest stretched endlessly, a frozen sea of gray and white. Every branch sagged under the weight of snow, and the wind whispered secrets too old for human ears. Ilara moved slowly, her boots crunching against the icy ground. Each step sent shivers through her body, not only from the cold but from the weight of her own fear. The curse that had haunted her family for generations was alive inside her, a frost that stole warmth from her veins. She pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders, but it did little. The cold seeped past fabric and skin alike, curling in her chest, tightening around her heart. Her fingers trembled, and she hugged herself in a futile attempt to fight the frost. She had wandered far from the safety of the village, drawn by a strange, unexplainable pull deeper into the woods. She did not know what she sought, perhaps an answer, perhaps an end, but she could feel the forest watching. Shadows moved among the trees, subtle but deliberate. Every step made the silence of the snow-bound woods heavier, more oppressive. Ilara's breath came in white clouds, and every exhale felt like a gasp for life itself. Then, through the gray mist of falling snow, she saw a figure. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light, a phantom of her own imagination. But as he stepped closer, the snow shifting beneath him without leaving a trace, she realized he was real. He was tall, clad in dark armor that seemed to absorb the twilight rather than reflect it. A cloak hung from his shoulders, black as a starless night, and his eyes, pale and intense, pierced through the gray haze. There was an aura about him, a quiet command that seemed to still the forest itself. Ilara froze, unsure whether to run or speak. The man stopped a few paces away. His gaze softened as it fell on her, and in that moment she felt something she had not felt in years: warmth. Not physical warmth, but the promise of it, a pull towards safety and understanding. "Do not move," he said, his voice low and calm, carrying over the wind. "You are lost in a cold that is not just of snow." Ilara's lips parted, but no sound came. She could only stare at him, heart hammering in her chest, as though it might shatter beneath the frost. "I know what haunts you," he continued, taking a slow step closer. "The cold inside you. It is not meant to be borne alone." Her knees threatened to give way, but some instinct, some desperate hope, held her upright. The man extended a hand, gloved in leather so dark it seemed to drink in the light. "Take my hand. Trust me, and I will warm you until the cold fades from your soul." Ilara hesitated. Every instinct screamed caution, but there was something in his gaze, a certainty, a quiet power that drew her in. Slowly, trembling, she reached out. The moment her fingers brushed his, a strange warmth spread through her, unlike anything she had felt in years. It began in her fingertips, curling upward through her arms, threading through her veins. She gasped, the frost in her body melting with each heartbeat. The man's hand held hers firmly, yet gently. He did not pull away. He seemed to understand the fragile balance between fear and trust, pain and hope. The warmth was more than physical. It was a presence, a silent promise that she could survive this night, that she was not meant to face her curse alone. Ilara's knees wobbled and he stepped closer, supporting her. His eyes searched hers, unflinching, and in them she saw understanding and something more. She could not name it yet, not here in the gray forest, but it stirred a longing she had buried deep. "You are safe with me," he murmured again, voice barely above the wind. "No shadow can touch you while I stand by your side." But even as she clung to his hand, a movement caught her attention, something shifting in the shadows beyond the trees. It was subtle at first, a flicker of darkness against the white snow. Then it grew, a form emerging from the mist, hunched and unnatural. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent red, and its movements were deliberate, predatory. Elara's breath caught. Fear surged through her faster than the cold ever could. She felt the frost return in the tips of her fingers, as if the creature's presence drew the chill from the world itself. The man noticed immediately. His hand tightened around hers, and the glow of warmth pulsed from him, pushing back the creeping frost. His other hand went to the hilt of a sword at his side, the blade faintly shimmering as if it were alive. "Do not be afraid," he said firmly, eyes narrowing on the approaching shadow. "This is my battle to face. Stand behind me." Elara's heart pounded in her chest, both from fear and something else, a rising tension she could not name. She obeyed, instinctively stepping behind him, trusting him completely despite the terror curling in her stomach. The creature came closer, snarling, frost forming around its claws as it moved. Its eyes fixed on her, glowing brighter, hungering for the warmth that radiated from her body through his hand. The knight did not hesitate. With a swift, fluid motion, he drew his sword. The blade caught the dim light of the winter sky, reflecting it in sharp streaks as he stepped in front of her. "You will not harm her," he said, voice like steel. "Not while I breathe." The creature leapt, but the knight was ready. The sword met its claws with a resonant clang, the force of it sending a shockwave through the snow. The creature shrieked, retreating momentarily, but it did not flee entirely. Its eyes remained fixed on Elara. Her fingers gripped his arm instinctively. What is it?" she whispered, voice trembling. "It is drawn to your warmth," he replied, eyes never leaving the shadow. "Your soul is rare, and darkness fears it. It will not stop until it consumes what you carry inside." Elara shivered, but this time not from the cold. She looked at him, really looked, and felt something break in her heart. The realization that this stranger, this night of shadows, had come not by chance, but because of her. And more than that, he had chosen to stand between her and death, to protect her at the cost of his own life. The creature lunged again. The knight's sword cut through the air, precise and lethal. Snow flew in arcs around them, and the cold air was thick with the smell of ice and metal. The creature faltered, but it was resilient, slipping into the shadows with a hiss that promised it would return. Kale lowered his sword slowly, eyes scanning the trees until the forest was silent once more. He turned to Elara, brushing a strand of snow-damp hair from her face. "You are safe. For now." She swallowed hard, her lips trembling. "You saved me." "I will continue to save you," he said softly, the weight of the words pressing into her chest. "Do not shake any more. I'll warm you until the cold fades from your soul." Elara looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in years, she felt the tight knot of fear inside her begin to loosen. But she also felt the danger, the shadow lingering beyond the trees, watching, waiting. She could not yet understand what she had stumbled into, the cursed forest, the night, the creature that had pursued her. But she knew one thing clearly: her life would never be the same. He led her through the snow to a small, ruined cabin, half buried under ice and frost. The air inside smelled faintly of smoke and old wood, and it was warmer than the frozen forest outside, though still cold enough to make her shiver. Kyle set her down gently on a bench near a broken hearth. "You must rest," he said. "The journey has drained you. You cannot fight the cold and the curse on your own." Elara nodded, unable to find words. She felt a strange mix of safety and tension, trust and fear. She wanted to speak, to ask him who he was, why he was here. But the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she let him sit beside her, his presence a steady, grounding force in the chaos of her life. Outside, the wind howled through the gaps in the broken cabin, and snow fell silently on the roof. The shadows of the forest seemed to lean closer, watching, waiting. And though she was warm now, though the frost in her veins had begun to melt, Alara knew that this was only the beginning. The forest held secrets she could not yet comprehend, and the knight who had saved her carried his own burdens, ones he had yet to share. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope, not only for warmth, but for something more, something she had long forgotten, a connection, a presence that could pierce the isolation her curse had enforced. And as her eyes met his, she saw in them a reflection of her own longing, mirrored and yet restrained by shadows of pain and duty. The forest outside whispered. The creature had retreated, but it would return. The night stretched on, long and silent, and Alara's heartbeat slowly steadied against the warmth of his hand. Yet somewhere deep in the woods, in the spaces between snow and shadow, something waited, watching, ready to test the fragile bond that had just begun. And in that silence, Kale's words lingered, a promise and a warning. Don't shake anymore. I'll warm you until the cold fades from your soul. The frost inside her had begun to thaw, but the true darkness of her curse and the mysteries of the knight who had saved her were only just awakening. The ruined cabin stood silent beneath the pale glow of the twilight sky. Snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the world in quiet white, yet within, the air was warmer, almost alive. Alara sat near the broken hearth, hands clasped tightly in her lap, watching the knight, Kale, as he moved around the small room with careful, deliberate steps. The warmth that had spread through her earlier lingered, not fading. But now it carried a new feeling. Curiosity mixed with something she did not yet understand. A dangerous, thrilling hope. Kale's eyes, pale and unwavering, occasionally flicked toward her. There was a gentleness in his gaze that both unsettled and comforted her. She wanted to speak, to ask him questions, but fear and uncertainty held her tongue. Finally, unable to contain herself, she whispered, "Who are you? Why are you here?" He paused, the weight of his presence filling the room. "I am Kyle," he said simply, his voice calm, yet heavy with unspoken history. "I am bound to these woods, to protect those who wander into its shadows. You were not meant to face this alone." Alara's lips parted. "But the forest, the curse, I've carried it my whole life. Why me? Why now?" Kale hesitated, his gaze distant as if peering into a memory he could not share. "Because the forest recognizes what you carry inside," he said finally. "Your soul is different, rare. It glows with a warmth the shadows cannot bear. That is why the creature came for you. That is why I am here." Her pulse quickened. "A warmth in me?" she asked, confused. "I feel nothing but cold." "You feel it now," he said gently, stepping closer. "Because it exists. Because it has always existed. The curse only hides it, but it is there, waiting for someone to help it flourish." For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Snowflakes fell slowly, drifting in the half-light of the cabin. Alara studied his face, so composed, yet carrying a quiet intensity that made her heart beat faster. There was something about him, something unspoken, that drew her closer without words. Kyle knelt before her, placing his hands lightly on her knees, a gesture protective and yet intimate. "Rest now," he said. "The journey has drained you. The cold has done more than touch your body. It has reached your spirit. You need strength for what is to come." Alara wanted to protest, but exhaustion claimed her. She leaned back against the wall, closing her eyes as warmth from his hands seeped into her, calming the storm of frost that had gripped her heart. And as the minutes passed, something unexpected happened. She allowed herself to trust him, to believe that perhaps not all men of shadow and mystery brought harm. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes. The boundaries of time blurred in the warmth of the cabin. The snow outside thickened, covering tracks and hiding the world beyond. Ilara felt a subtle pull within her, a stir of power she did not understand, like a flame flickering beneath ice. When she opened her eyes, Kale was watching her. "You have strength," he said softly, almost to himself. "More than you realize. But the curse, it will not yield easily. It will test you, test us." Her brows furrowed. "Us?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he stood and moved to the cabin's small broken window, peering out into the shadowed forest. "I have sworn to protect those the forest chooses," he said finally. "And now, that duty is bound to you. Whatever waits in the darkness, whatever seeks your warmth, I will face it. But you must also face your own fear." Ilara swallowed hard. "I do not know if I am strong enough." Kale turned to her, eyes fierce yet calm, a strange mixture that made her heart ache with both longing and admiration. "Strength is not just measured in battle," he said. "It is measured in courage, in choosing to stand even when the world seems against you. You have that, Ilara. I see it." She looked down at her hands, suddenly aware of how cold they still were, despite his warmth. The frost lingered in the edges, stubborn and cruel, but inside her chest a different warmth began to spread, one that was not just from him, but from a rising sense of possibility, of hope. Can I learn to control it?" she asked softly. "The warmth? The curse?" Kyle nodded. "Yes, but it will not be easy. Darkness grows in places where light has been hidden too long. You will need to confront it, to challenge it, and I will be there." The fire of trust between them grew, unspoken but undeniable. Yet even as they shared this fragile closeness, the forest beyond the cabin stirred, shadows lengthened, forming shapes that seemed almost human, almost alive. Ilara felt her pulse quicken. "The creature, it will return," she whispered. Kale's jaw tightened. "Yes," he admitted, "and it will be stronger next time. The shadows in this forest are patient. They do not forget." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Kale moved to a corner of the cabin and retrieved a bundle of old parchment, worn and fragile. "These were left behind by the scholars of the kingdom," he said. "They studied the curse, its origins, and its weaknesses. You must learn what you can from them." Ilara leaned forward eagerly, despite the cold and exhaustion. Her fingers traced the faded symbols on the parchment, each one strange and beautiful, filled with ancient power. The texts spoke of the curse's creation, of jealousy and ambition, of a queen who sought eternal beauty and power. Her ancestors had been caught in her wrath, and the curse had passed down through generations, freezing their hearts and bodies, stealing warmth from their lives. "Then, there is a way to end it?" Ilara asked, hope threading through her voice. Kale's eyes met hers. "There is a way, but it is dangerous. It will demand courage, wisdom, and a heart willing to face darkness. You cannot do it alone." The room seemed to shrink around them, the warmth between them growing almost tangible. Ilara felt the pull of his presence, not merely as protector, but as something more profound, a tether connecting her to life, to hope, to a chance at freedom. Yet with that pull came fear, the fear of attachment, of vulnerability, of the consequences her warmth might bring. Night fell fully over the forest, turning the cabin into an island of light in a sea of shadows. Kyle and Ilara worked together, deciphering the texts, discovering rituals and exercises to strengthen her inner warmth, to guard it against the cold that haunted her. Each touch, each shared breath, carried tension, a closeness neither could deny, yet neither could act upon fully. At one point, Kale reached for her hand to steady her as she bent over a parchment, Their fingers brushed, lingered, and both flinched at the intensity of the connection. Ilara's pulse surged, warmth spreading beyond the reach of magic, filling the spaces between fear and longing. She looked up at him, and for a moment words failed them both. The room seemed charged, heavy with unspoken truths and emotions neither dared voice. But even in the warmth of the cabin, the shadow outside did not sleep. Through the cracks in the walls, a cold wind whispered secrets, carrying a menace that refused to be ignored. Ilara shivered, and Kale's hand moved to her shoulder, steadying her. "You are not alone," he said softly. "Whatever comes, we will face it together." Her gaze met his, searching for answers, for reassurance, for something she could hold on to. In his eyes, she saw not only strength, but the echo of his own pain, a quiet suffering that mirrored her own, and she understood in that moment that their bond was more than chance. It was survival, yes, but it was also the beginning of something that might defy the darkness itself. The first hours of night passed slowly, the wind moaning outside, carrying the promise of the forest's creatures. Ilara rested against the wall, feeling the warmth in her chest pulse stronger with every heartbeat. Kyle remained vigilant, eyes scanning the shadows, ready for the inevitable return of the creature that had attacked her. It came just before dawn. A presence, silent yet unmistakable, slipped through the forest and approached the cabin. Ilara's pulse quickened, frost creeping again at the edges of her fingers. Kale's hand gripped his sword, and the air seemed to thrum with tension. The shadow loomed at the threshold, eyes glowing with a red that matched the first encounter. "You cannot hide your warmth forever," the creature hissed, its voice a cruel whisper in the cold air. Kale stepped forward, sword in hand, placing himself between the creature and Ilara. "Your time is not yet," he said firmly. "You will not harm her while I draw breath." Ilara's heart raced. She realized in that moment that the bond she felt with Kale was more than trust. It was reliance, a thread connecting their fates, and the thought terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. The shadow paused, circling the cabin, and then vanished into the forest, leaving a silence heavier than the snow itself. Ilara turned to Kale, breath shaking. "It will return," she said. Kale nodded, his expression solemn. "Yes, and next time it will not be alone. We must be ready." Ilara's hands clenched around her knees, but she felt a strange courage rising, fed by his presence and the growing warmth inside her. "Then we will face it," she said quietly, her voice stronger than she expected. "Together." Kyle's gaze softened, and for a fleeting moment, the weight of their burdens seemed lighter. But the night was not yet over, and the forest whispered that the true test of courage and of the bond forming between them was only beginning. The snow fell silently outside, a fragile white shield against the darkness. Inside, the warmth lingered, growing stronger, a fire that could either save them or draw the shadows to their doom. And as dawn broke, pale and fragile against the endless twilight of the cursed kingdom, both Kale and Ilara understood the truth. Their fates were bound together by warmth and shadow, by courage and fear, by the fragile hope that even in a world of darkness, fire could still flourish. The forest outside the cabin had changed overnight. The snow glimmered under a pale light, untouched, almost sacred, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Ilara rose from her bench, her body still shivering from the cold, but inside, something stronger had begun to grow, a warmth that was entirely hers. Kale stood nearby, his eyes scanning the forest, ever vigilant, yet his presence carried a calm certainty that eased the remaining frost in her heart. "Are you ready?" Kyle asked, his voice low, carrying the weight of duty and quiet hope. Ilara nodded, gripping the bundle of ancient texts they had studied together. I think so. The ritual, the exercises, they have helped. I feel stronger, warmer, but I know this isn't over. Kyle gave a small, approving nod. It is never over until the curse is broken, but courage and warmth will see us through. Together they stepped out into the forest, snow crunching beneath their boots. Every shadow seemed alive, every tree a silent witness to the journey ahead. Ilara felt the pull of magic within her, a light fighting against the darkness that had long claimed her family. She focused on it, letting the warmth spread from her chest through her arms and legs, building strength with each step. The air grew colder as they approached the heart of the cursed woods, where the trees formed a natural circle. This was where the Queen's power lingered, a place where the frost had never fully melted, even in summer. The snow here was thick, almost unnatural, and a sense of watchfulness pressed down on them, heavy and suffocating. Cale drew his sword, its faint glow reflecting the pale light. "Stay close," he said. "Whatever is here will test us, both the darkness in the forest and the darkness in your heart." Ilara swallowed, nodding. "I'm ready. Whatever comes, I won't run this time." As they stepped into the circle of ancient trees, the air shifted. Shadows thickened, moving with intention, forming shapes that were almost human but distorted, unnatural. At first, Ilara feared she would freeze, but she focused on the warmth within her. It pulsed like a steady flame, resisting the cold, resisting fear. Kyle stayed by her side, his hand brushing hers occasionally, not a touch for comfort alone, but a connection that strengthened her resolve. Then before them, the shadow manifested fully. The Queen's lingering spirit appeared, translucent yet commanding, her form regal and terrifying. "So the mortal girl dares to step into my domain," the Queen's voice echoed low and resonant, carrying through the forest. "And the night dares to protect her. How predictable!" Ilara's pulse quickened, but she did not falter. "I am not afraid," she said, her voice clear, carrying the warmth she had nurtured within herself. "I will not let you control me anymore." Cale moved in front of her, sword raised. "She is not alone," he said firmly, "and you will not harm her while I stand." The Queen's spirit laughed, a sound like cracking ice. "Ah, but warmth and courage are fleeting. Fear always returns, and power always chooses its master." Ilara felt a shiver pass through her, but she did not retreat. She focused on the pulse inside her, on the warmth that Cale's presence had helped her awaken. Slowly, deliberately, she held out her hands, letting the light of her inner fire flow outward, forming a protective circle around her and Cale. The Queen hissed, recoiling. "You think a girl can defy me? I created the frost in your veins, and I alone can end it." Cale's gaze never left the Queen. "You underestimate the strength of those who choose to stand," he said. "Courage does not come from birthright. It comes from heart and action." The Queen struck with a wave of icy power, a blast that could freeze anything it touched. Cale met it with his sword, the blade glowing as it absorbed the frost, sending it back like a reflection of their combined strength. Ilara focused, pushing her inner warmth outward, and the two forces merged, creating a protective barrier that repelled the Queen's attack. "Together," Cale murmured, and Ilara understood. Their powers were linked, warmth and courage binding them in a way the Queen could not break. The battle of wills continued, the Queen striking with shadows and frost, Kyle deflecting with skill and determination, Ilara bolstering the warmth that protected them both. The forest seemed to watch, trees leaning closer, the snow holding its breath. Each strike, each surge of power, tested Ilara's courage and focus. She felt the familiar chill trying to claw its way back, but she would not let it. Not now. Finally, the queen's spirit paused, swirling around them in a vortex of icy wind. "You are stronger than I anticipated," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "But the frost is eternal. You cannot undo what I began." Alara stepped forward, heart steady, flame of warmth blazing. "You are wrong," she said. "I am not just warmth. I am courage, and I choose life. I choose to thaw the darkness in me and in others." Kale placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "And I choose to stand with you," he said. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The queen's spirit let out a scream, a sound that split the air like ice breaking. Light and shadow collided, but the bond between Alara and Kale held firm. The warmth in her veins flared, brighter than ever, melting the frost that had bound her for so long. The queen's power began to unravel, the shadows dissipating into the forest air like smoke. For a long moment, silence fell. Snowflakes drifted gently to the ground, and the forest seemed to sigh, relieved at the release of the ancient frost. Ilara's breath came in shallow, rapid gasps, but the warmth inside her did not fade. It had become a part of her, unshakable and strong. Kale lowered his sword, eyes filled with relief, and something softer, admiration, and perhaps something more that neither dared speak aloud yet. He reached for her hand, and she took it without hesitation, feeling the warmth of his touch mingling with her own. "You did it," he said quietly, almost in awe. "The curse. It is broken." Alara exhaled, a mixture of exhaustion and wonder flowing through her. I can feel warmth again," she said softly, tears pricking her eyes. "Not just in my body, but here." She touched her chest. "Here, too." Kyle's gaze softened. "And that warmth, it will not fade. You have faced the darkness and found your strength, and you did not face it alone." The bond between them, forged in shadows and frost, now felt unbreakable. They had faced fear, darkness, and death together, and they had emerged stronger, warmer, alive. The forest itself seemed to respond, snowflakes catching the light, turning the world into a place of fragile beauty. Alara looked at Kale, a quiet question in her eyes. He met it without words, their hands entwined, and for the first time, there was no fear, only trust, hope, and the beginning of something neither had expected. A connection deeper than survival, stronger than the frost that had haunted her family for generations. But even in this moment of triumph, the forest whispered reminders of the world beyond. Shadows moved in the distance, subtle, as if observing, waiting. The queen's power had been broken, but not entirely destroyed. There would be tests yet to come, challenges that would require their combined courage and warmth. Kale turned to Alara, his expression steady, resolute. "This is only the beginning," he said. "The frost is gone, but there are other shadows in the world. Ones that may try to take your warmth, your courage, or mine. We must be ready." Alara nodded, feeling a fire ignite within her chest. "I am ready," she said. "Whatever comes, we will face it together." For a long moment they stood in silence, hands clasped, warmth radiating between them. The snow continued to fall, the forest alive with possibility, both dangerous and beautiful. They had survived the frost, the curse, and the queen's lingering shadow, and in doing so, they had forged a bond that could withstand darkness. And as the first real rays of sunlight broke over the horizon, pale and fragile, the world seemed to breathe with them. The kingdom, frozen for so long, now held the promise of thaw, of renewal, and of hope. Alara looked at Kale, her heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and something unspoken, something that words could not yet contain. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not letting me face it alone." Kyle's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability showing through his usual composure. "You would have faced it, eventually," he said, "but I am glad I could stand beside you. And now, we face the future, together." The warmth between them lingered, stronger than snow, stronger than fear, stronger than any shadow that dared to return. The curse was broken, yes, but more importantly, the bond they had formed in the coldest, darkest nights would carry them forward, guiding them through whatever trials the world might still hold. As the sun climbed higher, illuminating the forest with a fragile glow, Alara and Kale walked side by side, leaving the cabin and the circle of ancient trees behind. Their path was uncertain, the world still full of shadows, but they had learned to face the darkness, and in doing so, they had discovered warmth, courage, and each other. And though the whispers of the forest lingered, hinting at future challenges, the frost had finally faded from Ilara's soul. For the first time in her life, she felt alive.